In this video, I'll show you how I climbed from being unranked to Diamond 4 with a 70% win rate, and even all the way to Diamond 2 with a 69% win rate. And I did it by playing a champion I've almost never played before. I'll be going over the 10 concepts that got me to Diamond 4 with that 70% win rate. Here's a bit of context before we jump into those 10 concepts. The main champion that I played during this climb is Annie. Almost every single game I picked Annie and went teleport with Predator with only one goal: impacting the map as fast as possible. After playing 28 games and having a 75% win rate, I averaged 5.7 CS per minute, so you should already notice that I don't farm a lot when playing this playstyle. However, I averaged about 8 kills and 10 assists per game. On top of that, because of my high win rate, I played against low master players from the moment I got to high platinum myself, which can also be useful as a piece of context. The first thing I noticed during my climb is that farming is overrated. And this comes from a Vladimir main who's used to perma farming all the time. In the lower elo bracket, which I consider to be every elo below Diamond, you can get away with roaming a lot while missing a lot of CS, as long as you're playing a champion that's useful for roaming. Since Annie offers great burst damage, a stun, a shield and mobility, she's perfect for roaming, especially with Predator. Roaming is turbo broken in the lower elo bracket because of these 3 reasons. Number 1, you create a number advantage. I always try to roam together with my jungler. This way, if we roam to top lane for example, and the enemy jungler is also there, we still have a number advantage. So if a fight breaks out, we should always win. 2, your enemies won't have a lot of map awareness. When you roam, oftentimes the enemies won't expect it and you will be able to catch them off guard, resulting in free kills. And last but not least, in the lower elo bracket, you don't get punished as much for roaming as when you would do the same but against the better players. A Platinum Yasuo might recall whenever he sees you roam, whereas a Master Yasuo will try to accumulate as much plate gold as possible and damage your turret and basically punish you for roaming. Now, like I said, from the moment I got to high platinum, because of my win rate, I started playing against high diamond / low master tier players, and this strategy still works very well. But there's an important side note to all of this. This playstyle always involves a lot of risk. In order for it to work, you need to get more out of your roams than that you lose in the mid lane while you were gone. That's why this playstyle isn't considered consistent. However, in the lower elo bracket, you can consistently get away with it, and that's what I found out. However, in doing so, you might pick up the habit of giving up waves all the time just to roam, and if your goal is to get to high elo and you're easily susceptible to picking up bad habits, this playstyle might not be for you. The second concept I want to talk about is roaming and recall timers. It baffles me how few players know how to create a proper recall or roam timer. I already mentioned this in a previous video, so I'll put a link to that video in the description down below with the according timestamp so that you don't have to watch the entire video if you don't feel like it. The main takeaway here though is that when you recall while your lane opponent is still in lane, you will already be in base when your lane opponent is starting his recall. That means you will arrive in lane first and thus you'll be able to push out the wave first. This way, by the time your mid lane opponent is back in lane again, you're already roaming. But like I said, I heavily suggest you watch the video that is linked in the description down below after you finish the video. The third concept is going to be about vision. In the lower elo bracket, it's actually ridiculous how few players are actively trying to set up and clear vision. This means if you buy a control ward and an oracle lens, you can maneuver through the entire enemy jungle and try to surprise people and pick them off. This is especially important when it comes to preparing big objectives like drakes and heralds. Rather than arriving at the drake at the very last second before it spawns, push out to mid wave 30 seconds before the objective spawns, then go into the jungle, clear vision and set up vision of your own and try to pick off people who walk by. This way you win the objective fight without having to coin flip a 5v5 fight. And I know a lot of people already know this concept, but it baffles me how few people actually implement it in game. The fourth concept is about builds. As a mid laner, especially as Annie, usually you want to go a burst oriented build to one-shot the enemy backline. But what if the enemies have a lot of tanks? In the vast majority of your games, it will be best to build the highest burst oriented build to one-shot the enemy backline, even if they have a lot of tanks. So basically, you should go for a high damage oriented build to 1v9 your games rather than trying to assist your team. League of Legends is a team game, but when it comes to carrying, especially in the lower elo bracket, try to do as much damage as possible yourself and only peer your teammates as a last resort. The fifth concept is about Baron calls. The main tool that will help you close out games if you're ahead or get you back into the game if you're behind is the Baron buff. People underestimate it so hard. Whenever you kill the enemy jungler and you're 5 versus 4 on the map, or you see 2 people of the enemy team on the opposite side of the map, communicate through pings and chat to your team that you want to do Baron. Spam the Baron and walk there yourself, and if necessary, start it yourself until your teammates come with you. At that point, if your teammates are not coming, then it's okay to say I tried but they didn't listen. Doing anything less than that is not enough. Everybody in your team, including you, needs someone to shot call for them. You need to become that shot caller. Even if you're not confident in your own calls, do them anyway, because the only efficient way to improve at making those shot calls is by making them and seeing how they work out. Concept number 6 covers wave mechanics. Now, even though your teammates and enemies might seem like subhuman beings from time to time, if you know what I mean, let's assume that both you and your mid lane opponent are human beings, right? How broken is it to have a tool to manipulate another human being even though he has his own game plan? That's what knowing wave mechanics does for you. It allows you to manipulate the wave, and since players need to stand close to the wave to get the XP and gold from the minions to level up and become strong, you're manipulating the players as well. Now, I won't explain wave mechanics in this video because 1, this video would become way too long, and 2, there are dozens of good wave mechanics videos on YouTube already. What I mainly did with my playstyle as Annie was this. I went Predator with Teleport. Once the game starts, I let the enemy push towards me and then freeze the wave in front of my turret. I do this so that I can consistently get 1.1k gold without being vulnerable to ganks from the enemy jungler or all-ins from my mid lane opponent. Once I have 1.1k gold, I recall, buy sorcery shoes, teleport back to lane, push out the wave and start roaming with Predator. After this stage, I just go mid again after I did a roam, push out the wave again and go for another roam, and I just repeat this process over and over again. Concept number 7 is all about objective trading. Everyone, but literally everyone, is so brainwashed about the importance of focusing on objectives that they throw games all the time because of that. They take dragon fights that they can't win. They overextend for a turret and die because of it. This is where objective trading comes in. If you can't contest to Drake because your jungler ran it down 10 seconds ago and now it's a 4 versus 5, don't try to fight for the Drake. You won't win the fight. It's as simple as that. Instead, try to trade another objective for the Drake. While the entire enemy team is doing the Drake, ping your team to take mid lane turret, or top lane turret, or take the enemy jungle camps, or take Herald, etc. There are so many objectives on the map, don't tunnel vision yourself on contesting objectives if it isn't a fair fight. Just look to trade something else on the map, this way the enemy team won't ace you at 15 minutes into the game because you wanted to contest a first Drake for the enemy team while your jungler was dead, which doesn't really make any sense, right? Concept 8 is something I picked up along the way of this particular climb from unranked till diamond. It comes down to this. The longer a game goes on, the more you should be grouping with your team. If you're playing with good players in high elo, this isn't necessarily true, but in the lower elo bracket it has become my golden rule. I'm basically sick of playing very well all game long to then at 30 minutes see that my bot lane overextends once, they die and don't respawn for another minute, the enemy team takes Baron and they end the game before my bot lane respawns. In mid game, I'm okay with my teammates running it down and making mistakes. The death timers aren't that long, so the enemies can't do much while my teammates are dead. But the longer a game goes on, the longer the death timers become, and then one mistake from one of your teammates could end up losing you the game. My solution for all of this: starting from 30 minutes on, I perma-hover my teammates to make sure if a fight breaks out, I'm there to save the day. I'm not necessarily showing myself and grouping together with my teammates in vision, but I'm just hovering in bushes to see if the enemy team engages on my teammates, I can just flank them and I'll be there to save the day. Concept 9 is more of a specific tip. Something that can help you catch your enemies off guard is actually doing lane ganks. I'm actually very surprised to see that this has almost never happened to me. I think that all the way from being unranked till diamond, I saw only a handful of situations where teammates or enemies abuse lane ganks. For example, if your bot lane is always pushing and poking the enemies under their turret, go bot lane, sneak into a lane brush, tell your bot lane to let the wave come to the middle of the lane, and then you get a free surprise attack on the enemy bot lane, and most of the time this will even result in a double kill. And last but not least, I want to talk about syncing your recall timers with your teammates. I'm pretty confident that you've encountered something similar to the following situation. You're 25 minutes into the game. Both Baron and Dragon are up. You start a 5 versus 5 Drake fight and you win the fight. You get a lot of gold from the fight and now you're 500 gold short of your next item power spike, for example, Rabadon's Death Cap. Your team is already recalling and spending gold and getting back onto the map, while you're still on the map trying to accumulate 500 gold to get that item power spike. You finally accumulate enough gold, but everybody is on the map again with a Baron fight on the verge of breaking out. You recall, and while doing so, you tell your team to play safe and wait with fighting until you're there with them again. While recalling, you see your drug addict Rammus Predator Q with supersonic speed into 5 enemies, unleashing a fight that will result in the enemy team acing your team, taking Baron and ending the game. What went wrong? Was the drug addict Rammus here the problem? Well, yes, but could you have avoided all of that by recalling together with your team? Also yes. I've noticed that people in the lower elo bracket are very susceptible to getting picked off, especially in the late game. Try to sync your recall timers with your teammates so that all of you get onto the map at the same time again, so that it's a lot less likely that somebody gets picked off. Alright, we have covered all the concepts that helped me climb to Diamond 4 with a 70% win rate or concept that I just picked up along the way. These 10 concepts are just things that I actively try to think of during my games, and to me it felt that these concepts are what made me have an advantage over everyone else in my games. Now, if you're still here, thank you so much for watching the video until the very end. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye.